Hey everyone, welcome to the Human Cloud Podcast, the spot where leaders come to drive the freelance economy forward. So today we have David and Christian, founders of Expert Powerhouse. And Expert Powerhouse is based in Germany with clients all over Europe and all over the globe. Now, David and Christian are some of my favorite founders in the space. The reason is that, as you'll see, they really deeply understand the problem they're solving for, because they were the BCG consultants that needed this solution. So what you're going to learn is that Expert Powerhouse is in a really interesting position. Specifically, they are in between the GLG/TGIS expert networks and the large 500K plus BCG/McKinsey projects. So that's why they're called Expert Powerhouse. And one of the things you're going to learn is the power of fractionalization that Expert Powerhouse can provide. And so you're going to hear probably my favorite example yet, and that is a large company building out a maintenance plan using a fractional expert 3 days a week for 6 months being better than going with a full-time resource for a full year or the full agency project. So sit back, enjoy, but most important, go drive some change. Listen, before we get started, let's talk real quick about the key to scaling and sustaining a freelance and solopreneur business. Listen, I know none of us got into freelancing because we wanted to be an accountant, unless you're a freelance accountant. But the reality is, if we don't have the right financial structure, we're going to be hurting come tax season. Which is why today's episode is brought to you by Collective, the all-in-one financial solution. Collective handles the main things that we all need from a financial and back office perspective. It handles incorporation, specifically the S Corp. It handles business taxes. It handles accounting. It handles bookkeeping, payroll, even compliance. And most important, it's not just the software. They have tax and accounting experts ready to help. Now, here's the deal. You do need to take action right now, specifically before June 30th, because if you have an LLC and you start on Collective, they can backdate your S Corp to January 1st. And the results are on average over $10,000 per year on tax savings with this structure. So I want you to go right now to collective.com/humancloud. Then go scale your freelance business. All right, David and Christian, we got the tandem duo here. So listen, the next 40 minutes, I want listeners to walk away thinking that I want to be activated and I want to adopt freelance workforces. And so I want enterprise leaders, very selfishly, to go, I need to talk with David and Christian. And so that's going to be sort of the theme of the next 40 minutes is we're going to focus everything towards how to actually get people to adopt the freelance economy. So I'm going to kick it over to either one of you and just give a brief intro of Expert Powerhouse, and let me give a little bit of my spin of why I'm always so excited to talk with you guys. Is your background was deep consulting, right? So you both have the BCGs, you both have the traditional consulting experiences. You could have made a bunch of money being a partner at these firms. For some reason, you go and you start the next wave of consulting. And so I just want to make sure I put that out there, that deeper than Expert Powerhouse, you two, it's like a wealth of knowledge every time I hear from you about consulting. So either one of you, I'm going to kick it over to you. Give a little intro of Expert Powerhouse.
Yeah, I mean, that's a story actually. Yeah? So we were both working at BCG, just to give a very brief on it. And that's where also the idea was found for Expert Powers, because we realized ourselves that every now and then either like consulting capacity was missing on the team or like a specific expertise was missing on the team. And that is what we are trying to achieve with Expert Powers, to being able to provide our clients with specific missing expertise or with consulting expertise for what matters. And that's also what we are focusing on with Expert Powers. We're really focusing on the higher end of the freelancer scale, where it's really more about strategy consulting topics, management consulting topics, and the likes.
And I think, just adding, I mean, it's super exciting to be in the human cloud, and talking about the Expert Powerhouse and how it all came together now. I think both David and I, we worked in BCG for a long time. We had great projects there, transformation projects, industry projects, international cases also. So it's really like, knowing consulting inside out. And we even did a case together. And how it's always at the end there, you have a great project, the client is happy, you've done all your deliverables, you've had the board presentation, they've accepted everything. And then suddenly you're standing outside on the floor and the client project leader comes and says, hey guys, ah, I'm still missing 2 members in my team. Do you not have someone in your case team who would likes to join me and to continue all the efforts? Yeah, and can you maybe propose a candidate to help us out and really make sure that all the initiatives are coming on? And I think that were situations we found ourselves in. At some point in time, we said, like, hey, wouldn't it be nice to have a pool of people to offer in these situations? Yeah, but there wasn't any. So that I think kicked it off a bit. And then, of course, we started elaborating on that idea.
I love it. So let's get super tactical about what does the Expert Powerhouse Network. What are the locations? So are we talking all of Europe, US, all of Europe, US, Middle East, and Asia? Because I really want to set the scene of the exposure first, because that's one of the big considerations now that we're really hearing as well as, is this just Europe? Is this just Germany? Is this just Poland? Right? And so let's start with, what's the global exposure look like?
We were just looking into it very recently, and we have like nearly 70% of our consultants and our business is in Europe, 50% in Germany or the German-speaking countries like Austria and Switzerland, including, and the rest is global business that we do. So
Gotcha.
it is not that we are limited to a specific country, but of course also historically grown. We have a focus on the German-speaking countries and Europe.
Gotcha. And the clients, do the clients tend to be German companies? Do they tend to be, coming from one location, or what about the client exposure?
It's very similar distributed. So
Similar
network and clients and projects are very similarly distributed. Again, historically, we do have a lot of German clients, and also some of them also go international, or most of the clients are big clients that are anyways international, and that not only require support in Germany, but everywhere in the world. But we also have international clients that are not based in Germany, that are not headquartered in Germany.
Gotcha. So let's get super tactical about when we say consultants, what we mean. And the reason I'm going to bring that up is because there's a lot of, and increasingly there's a lot of consulting, there's a lot of fractional. And then when you unpeel the onion, you go, wow, this looks actually totally different than the other consulting marketplace. And you start to see kind of, oh, they're fitting in that bucket rather than all of consulting. And so help me understand, sort of, when we say an expert powerhouse consultant, what do we mean by that? And you've mentioned strategy consultant, but let's really dive into what are typical consultants that you have on your network.
So I think classically, coming also from strategy consulting in the Boston Consulting Group, I think we have a lot of people in our network that have formerly worked at a consulting house. And that could be, of course, like a top tier consultancy, but it could be also just a boutique consultancy that has a specific niche or specialization. But the one I think really resembles and is very common to all of these consultants, that they share a passion for consulting and working with clients. That they share also working on problems that are not so standard, finding new creative solutions. So it's a classical management consulting profile. And of course, there are some people in our network that are more specialized in a specific industry, like automotive or manufacturing. There are others that are specialized more in a function. But with the breadth of the network that we have, we can cover really a lot of verticals and functions. So we, in that sense, even you could say industry agnostic. But what we can do is we're specialized in management consulting and bring those type of people onto projects. That is one part of the network that we operate, from management consulting, from pool, as we call it. And then we have another segment in our network, which we call more subject matter experts. those are people that have really worked in the industry for a long period of time, let's say 20, 30 years. They know their topic inside out. They are a thought leader in their niche. And they can, of course, give a lot of advice to company leaders when it comes to strategic topics, to market entry topics, to just like leading transformations, what to do there, what not to do, how they've done it. And those are probably also the type of people where I'd say, some of them are not working full time, but they're working a bit fractional, meaning a day or two for a client on a particular project. And with full time, I don't really know what was that.
Yeah, some of them are actually even employed and just take a few hours per week on top of their normal employment. Huh? But I also like the question a lot, Matt, because everybody can name their self consultant. Unlike lawyers that have that cannot do it. Everybody can be consultant. So that's why we also take a lot of care of making the separation into real, what we call really consultants, people that have really some significant experience in a renowned consulting firm, versus the subject matter experts that have a specific and very sharp profile, a specific expertise in an industry, in a sector, in a specific topic. And thereby can also add value to client and project teams, but in a different way, of course.
Gotcha. Let's get, so I think this will help. Let's really discuss what engagements usually look like, because I think that might be some of the rub of people being confused by consultant, right? And if we could, let's try to string this. Let's try to balance this. If we could, let's go through what a traditional consulting engagement would look like. So if they're not going with EPH, if they're going with, your full-time comparable, and then what it looks like with EPH. Because I think that's going to cut through the noise of, are we talking about 3-month engagements? Are we talking about outcome-based engagements? Are we talking about hourly-based engagements? I think that's going to cut through the noise. And then after, I'm hoping it leads to, we really, really get to why this model is best for consulting. Because that's one of the overarching themes, right? Is there's never not going to be consultants. There's never not going to be subject matter experts. Every company needs this. The reality is they need to start shifting what they're already spending on BCG over to you. So let's start with what typical engagements look like.
Of the consulting firms, you mean, huh? So typical classic consulting firm engagements would be like large transformation projects, for example, or developing a new strategy. For me, it is really something that a company on purpose gives to a consulting firm, specifically also often enough to have this outside view. And then this external consulting firm is working on it. Obviously, they will also consult and align with stakeholders within the company, but it's still a pretty independent piece of work from the outside world. Obviously, they have a lot of expertise, they bring a lot of industry knowledge to the plate, and so on and so on. In our case, I would say the model is much more integrated because we would not necessarily bring a full consulting team, but our freelance independent consultants, they would complement teams that exist in the company. And then by definition, the work, the link together is of course much stronger because as a team that is complemented by external resources, experts, consultants, and so on, the topic is worked on, be it also a strategy development, be it a transformation, a reorganization, restructuring, M&A activities, all these topics, but that are more driven from the company itself, from the client itself.
And let me just define, because I think that was a crucial point, is instead of throwing it over the fence and saying, hey, consulting company, give us a $500 to $1.5 million SOW, and then we will work on this. Instead, what you're saying is EPH consultants, it's more embedded. So it's more, hey, this is a subject matter expert or consultant who's part of your team. You're not just throwing over the fence. That's part of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you develop it together, more integrated approach where you develop it together with the external consultants. Of course, there are also topics where you need to have the stamp of the large consulting firm. These things also exist. That's why we also by no means see ourselves as competitors to the traditional consulting firms. Some traditional consulting projects make a lot of sense. And as you also said in the beginning, Matt, will always be there. We don't see those traditional consulting firms as our competitors by no means. We are just adding another angle to it. And for some topics, our model is much more flexible and offers a lot of advantages and opportunities.
So you would fit more so, and this is really interesting because I'm interested in both. If you think that traditional consulting as a model will always stay and should stay, so I'm very interested in your take on that. But what it sounds like is there's something in between the like GLG Alpha Sites Expert Network call and the large strategy consulting engagement. And it sounds like what you're enabling is that in between where instead of just having, 1 hour with the subject matter expert for $3,000 an hour, instead of that, you can, in your words, embed them and integrate them in your teams. Is that an accurate way to put it?
I mean, yeah, to some extent, yes. Obviously, we say and we offer the opportunity for our clients to have everything from the 1 hour expert discussion to the multi-month project support. Now, our projects tend normally to be a bit longer than the classic consulting firm projects. It's also, of course, a matter of price. If you engage a consulting firm, you have to pay the entire pyramid with all the related cost. And then you get a full team, obviously, also. Generally, our projects are on average longer than from classical consulting topics or firms. But generally, we can bring that kind of expertise fully embedded in the client teams and fully complement existing or not existing expertise in client teams.
And I would even say we're not enabling that integration so much, but we're even fueling it. So I think what David also said, I think that I completely agree. There will always be a need for large transformational consulting projects. And that is exactly the charm of the, large top-tier consulting houses, where you have like a big team working internationally in the same, at the same time, having a completely unified methodology, rolling it out over, big corporation of 10,000s of employees. So I think that has a big value. And of course, for those type of projects, what you often see is also they don't just happen, but they happen through tendering. So those projects, they evolve, they get thought through. And of course, that's also what those large consulting houses excel in, writing proposals to clients. And we as Expert Powerhouse don't actually participate in such tender situations. So we rather fuel it. And it could be that we say, look, even for some consulting houses that we work with, we help you to find the experts or the specialist profiles for your consulting proposals, so you can get the best team on the ground for your industry client. But at times also, we fuel the industry clients where they say, look, here and there, we need a single resource on a change module, on a supply chain topic, and we basically get that resource. And it's not needed to put a full-blown consulting team exactly to solve that challenge, but it's sufficient to do it with 1 or 2 highly qualified resources. And in that sense, I think we really fuel both industry and consulting clients with the right talent.
It's really interesting how it's more so working with. It's actually something I didn't expect looking from the outside, but I'm really interested in how you've seen the industry change and where you see it going, because I think part of it is, someone who's new to it from the outside looks and goes, I'm going to disrupt consulting, right? And they look and they're like, I'm going to create something brand new. It's going to be disruption. It's going to look nothing like the old ways. And what it sounds like you're saying is, hey, there was some stuff that was working well, right? Like most of it, for the most part, the traditional consulting with the pyramid works pretty well in some cases. And so we're not disrupting that. We're complementing through embedding experts rather than just ripping up what worked prior. But, I think this is a good time to really go over like, what have you two, because you started this in 2016, right? And so what has changed like from 2016 to 2020? Because, being in this business for so long, it's like, I feel like I've seen at least three different waves, right? Of like 2010 to 2018, 2018 to 2022, 2022 to now, and then who knows what the hell's going to happen in the next 6 months. But super interested to hear how you've seen this all change.
I think there've been many waves. Maybe to just reflect a bit. We're now in a world of polycrisis and constant change. Yeah. But I mean, some things probably that were really interesting for us and fueled our growth at Expert Powerhouse was especially during the pandemic, when a lot of the consulting companies, because of the pandemic, had to go completely virtual. And not virtual in their client work, but also virtual in onboarding their consultants, virtual in training everyone. So building a sense of community was increasingly hard also for them, and to keep the values and starting new projects was suddenly not very different from starting a project with like 3 freelance people that you just put on a project, because you have virtual meetings, you have virtual IT infrastructure, sharing documents, all that kind of things. So what's the difference really also for people starting in that as a consultant? Would they rather go independent? Would they rather join a full-time company? So I think those were changed, and what we saw, of course, were that the consulting market itself got a lot more open. So suddenly it was possible to start a consultant from South Africa, German-speaking consultant, on their case in Berlin. Whereas before, probably the client would have said, well, it's impossible. They need to be on site 4 days a week. But now suddenly it was possible, and that opened the consulting market a lot for freelance talent, as we saw it. And it's still there. Of course, it's gotten back probably a little bit. But so that was one decisive wave of growth for us, also one decisive wave of growth for the freelance consulting market.
Let's hit on the last 6 months too, because floodgates open up in terms of remote is now accepted, and accepted was like forced, so there was some pushback. But now we're sitting in one of the weirdest times, I would say, because from our vantage point, I'll just give you some quick data from what we've seen. So, and you guys have heard a little bit of this, but so most people are neutral. No one, few people are saying this is the worst time, and few people are saying this is the best time. Now, of the people saying the best time, they have hit their goals, and most of them looked like 15 to 30% year over year. Of the ones saying that they weren't doing well, they were doing really bad in terms of they were mostly these self-service marketplaces built to be these venture-backed startups, didn't work too well. And so the past 6 months has been weird. The next 6 months also looks weird. And just to kind of break, there might be some international differences. And so here in the US, like inflation is not as bad as it was. It's still here though, and prices aren't what they were. There's still layoffs. And so I think today when I opened up my LinkedIn, I think it was around 600 Google people are gone. A lot of these tech companies are doing it quietly, yet they're still hiring. So there's this weird thing of hires amidst layoffs. So there's a lot of uncertainty right now. But what have you seen in the last 6 months, and sort of what are you expecting for the next 6 months and up to a year?
I mean, yeah, what you say is completely true. And I think it's so different for different players in the market because it depends a lot also on the topics that you serve. So what we have seen basically in the last year was that all kind of supply chain related topics are in very high demand. And that might change slightly this year because now all the supply shortages, they release a bit. Although we still expect that these kind of topics will remain in demand at least. Now, if you as a platform are somehow focused on investment topics, and you might have had not such a good time, or also on marketing, then I guess you would have struggled a lot. Because in crisis, typically what happens, or in times of insecurities, companies, of course, they look at their budgets, they look at their bottom line, the cost, and they try to reduce as much as they can. So everything that is not 100% required will be reduced. And that is also often topics like marketing, IT, cybersecurity, funnily enough, is also a topic like that, where you see, okay, you can also like push it for another and postpone it for another 6 months or so when it really hits you and you really have to keep the cost in check. Um, and then on the M&A activity, it was just low last year, also due to the economic environment and insecurities. There was not much happening. And so if you as a platform are very focused on these kind of topics, then you will surely have had a hard time or a harder time. Whereas when you are like focusing on more like operational topics, supply chain topics and the likes, also restructuring, then it's very likely you had a good time. And that will also for sure, I mean, that's my perspective. Christian, you say your perspective maybe afterwards. I believe it will stay a little like this for the next quarter, most probably 2 quarters. That the topics that will be in high demand and in lower demand will be the same. And then hopefully in the second half of the year, many of the insecurities that are currently in the market have kind of settled a little.
And when you say insecurities, David, help me understand the practical, the very, very, very practical implications of this. Does this mean that from what you've seen leaders shelf large projects? You've seen leaders shelf every type of project within this skill category? What have been, has it been, let's get rid of all marketing, let's get rid of all cyber, let's get rid of all non-core? Or are we seeing things like, okay, instead of having a large transformation project, let's bring on an individual expert to come help us out, help us out 2 days a week? How's that been?
I mean, generally, yes. Of course, there's always exemptions to what we just discussed now, but on an overall average review on it, that is what you see in times of economic insecurities. When it's just unclear how do the markets develop, then companies try to reduce cost, or like at least introduce measures of cost control, and then these topics that are not 100% required, they will be postponed or cancelled altogether. And that are these topics that we've discussed. Whereas others, you just need to follow through. You might have even more of those topics when it comes to restructuring cases, reorganizational cases, just stuff where you have a direct business case with a project because you're going to save cost. These things are then of course, even more important.
Gotcha. Let's talk about some big wins. And I want it under the lens of, if I'm sitting here as SVP, VP in strategic initiatives, someone that this can directly help my business, but it's really tough to get buy-in because I need buy-in across the company. I can't just do this myself. Let's talk about big wins so that I can then go to my boss or my team and say, listen, we need to lean in to freelance consulting. We can't keep going the old way. We need to lean into this. And so, I'll give some quick examples we've heard in the past couple months. One example is, a leader needed 16 software teams, and only with freelance networks, they created 2 in under 2 weeks, where prior it would take 6+ months, right? Another one that I always talk about is when North America's largest motorcycle manufacturer, they needed to have a digital experience, but you can't get talent to move to the middle America, meaning large swaths of data science and developer talent. And so from these lens, let's talk about some of the big wins. And I know last time we talked, there was something related to automotive, but floor's over to you. Let's fuel some of these massive wins because of freelance consulting.
thinking, I'm thinking what is an example. I think if I would be the head of strategy, it's probably I have this topic I need to solve. Yeah. And now I'm thinking, oh, do I put a consultant on that topic? And I know what are the typical consultant rates. And I know also what an employee costs me. But I've now trying to fill maybe for 6 months that role and I couldn't find someone. So one case, yeah, it's not a big win, but I think it's a very classical case. I'd say finally they made that step and it was really worth it. Yeah. Was they're looking for a person to build them like a maintenance excellence function. So someone who's got a really, really niche specific expertise, industry expertise, but also then consulting mindset. And they're looking for like a year to fill it. Yeah. So they couldn't find it. And they're like, okay, well, send us some freelance profiles that you have. Send us some consulting profiles. Yeah. And we send it through. And they're like, oh my God, that is so expensive to have that. Yeah, it's a perfect person. And it's a guy who's been really like 15 years in business, who's also did consulting by himself. Yeah. Now they did it and they say, okay, we take him on 3 days a week because that's the maximum budget we can afford. And half year in, we have a feedback discussion. And it's like, okay, well, do you want to extend it? What's your feeling about it? Do you need more resources? Because, it's only 60% of what you've initially, wanted to do. And they're like, what we figured out? We get the work done, even though he's basically only working 60%. Yeah? Because he's got the experience, we really have all the deliverables on track and we are within the budget. So at times maybe the solution to have a full-time role with 100% person could be also to have a very experienced person who can do the same job with 60% of their time. And of course that is something not very sort of, I would say, on the top of mind of many HR people, but also not on the mind of many leadership people. Yeah. And the advantage is, of course, also if you get someone experienced, you save on bringing them on board, training them, learning, they can hit the ground running the first day. Yeah. I think it's not a big win where we say, look, we put 100 consultants in place. But I think it's one where I say, like, this is really one of the values that we can add with expert powers to clients.
Yeah, this is the typical, both Dave and Christian, this is the typical German of humility, right? So the American would have taken what you just said and made it so grand and put it all over Times Square and been like, look, this is the greatest thing ever, right? And you two are like, this little thing happened. But the reality is it is a massive transformation what you're talking about. And so I think, the theme of this episode will probably be you don't need the 100%. And the implications of this are pretty massive because you see a lot of times in corporate that they take 100% of the B player and then nothing gets done, right? And so it's kind of this binary situation where it works or it doesn't work. And they take the B player because the B player might be cheaper or because they can't find the A player, but then it doesn't work. And so it's really just a sunk cost. Whereas in your case, they take 60% of the A player and more gets done than 100% of the B player. And I think one of the assumptions that, because I started in the freelance space. So for me, it was more, I just kept opening up to traditional and going, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And for me, one of the biggest, like, why are we doing this is 40 hours a week is hilarious. And even the fact that we use sometimes hours and even days to measure something is pretty hilarious because A players get stuff done, right? And A players refuse to have their reputation be hit by not going above and beyond their, the expectations of their clients. And so when I was looking at the freelance space, it cracked me up where it's like, technically, yeah, I could have 3 clients at 100% and I'll still get the outcomes done. Or I could have 3 clients at 10%, still get the outcomes done. But so this assumption, right, that, someone's 100%, does that mean they're getting all their outcomes done? Does that mean, and then, hitting on yours, 2 years from now, does that mean that maintenance function is going to have the right metrics of going above and beyond? Probably not. If a C player was drawing up the strategy, probably if an A player was. So You two Germans keeping it nice and humble. But David, what do you have to say about that? And I know I sound like the typical, yeah.
No, I was also, yeah, no, I was also thinking about that. That it could be someone at 60%, but it could be also someone who is only working for 3 months and then the project is done, and then maybe also the topic is solved and the delivery is done. Yeah, so you don't necessarily, for all topics that are to being fixed, whatever that is, need to hire someone full time who is then working on it all year and maybe 5 years even or whatever. There will be new topics he will find himself, and of course, then in that case, the business case also works because in that case you get probably the better person and probably also at a lower budget overall. Although we would never claim that our service is cheaper than something else. On the opposite, we would never go via the price, on purpose not. Although there's definitely cases where we also can help our clients to save costs in these specific cases that Christian described and my example that I had. But of course, as expert powers, we are always proud if we win large projects. We often also get the chance to not only place one consultant, but then also over the course of the project, because the clients realize, look, that is amazing work that is being done by the consultant. We need one more or two more or three more. We would not take over the duty of managing these people. That is not our business. Then we would be a consulting firm, and there we are very clear we are not a consulting firm. We are a marketplace, an agency, a mediator, however you want to call it. But of course, we are proud about these topics, and it's great because, first of all, obviously it's great for business, but obviously it's also a great recognition to get that instant feedback, because it shows that there is also a learning experience on the client end, appreciating the model.
Let's hit on quick. So, we got around 5 to 10 more minutes, right? So I just want to make sure we put the time into perspective. So let's hit on expansion. And so, Christian, to your case, we have the maintenance case. We've blown them away after 6 months because what 60% of an A player has done is 100% more than what a B player would have done at 100%, right? So we've done that. Now let's talk about expansion. And the reason I want to talk about expansion, based off our data, the number one activity for business impact was not sales and marketing. It was existing enterprise relationships. I'm totally not surprised to hear that. In 2020 to 2022, I bet you that wasn't the answer. I bet you it would have been more sales and marketing and paid search and things of that matter. But in the last year, it's 100% been existing accounts and having to expand. Let me give you one more quick, story for you listeners and you guys. So meeting, talking with the founder yesterday, founders, making 3 to 10 million a year in the creative space. And they have been working really hard with a large multinational, and they were in it, right? They were in the weeds for about a year. Now they figured it out come end of Q4, and there's now 35% growth across that account without them having to sell, because the account is selling itself, meaning the leader that they helped is going across the company to champion it. So from you guys, I really, 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 what have you seen as some of the reasons for expansion within accounts and best practices within expansion? And very selfishly, going back to Christian, the profile that you brought up, right? That head of strategy, how are they going to be able to expand you from just a quick little pilot to being able to use you at scale?
I think it's multiple things, yeah. And I think on a personal level, I think it's really got to do something with the growth mindset, that you say, okay, I really want to help these clients. I'm not just waiting for someone to come along, give me a project, and let some person on it. I think that's the wrong mindset. I think the mindset is still more like a consulting mindset, bringing really superior service to the clients. And I think if you have this mindset, also people will remember you. And they say, dude, maybe even I had cases where the initial request didn't work out, but we made such a great impression, and it was such a good quality, the people that we suggested, and it was a timely service, and we had a perfect feedback loop, that a client we worked with recommended us to a colleague in the company. So last time I spoke with them, they really we didn't work out, but have a go and have them. So it's really the word of mouth. Of course, that is something that that takes time. So I think also feel we proud of the achievements on our end, building such a great relationship-based business. But then also, I think really working with the clients, and not just saying, look, we got this one channel, that's it. Like where else can we help it? Where else can probably that flexible model also help you? And being in a dialogue where you can basically help a transformation in the business, and then things open up and you get maybe to some areas in the company where that have multiplier effects, like a staffing department that has oversight of a lot of initiatives going on. Some people in the organization frequently have this type of staffing request. At times, it means also speaking with HR about it, because my impression is, and that's if the head of strategy, would be nice to have a discussion together with you and your HR person on where freelance consultants can actually help your business. Because my feeling is that HR typically has only full-time recruitment basically on their plate, and strategic workforce development, including freelancers, is not really well known to these companies.
Yep, that makes total sense. So I'm going to ask you some quick little questions, because I think it'll help shape this. What does it usually look like when I come to you? Am I coming to you saying, here's a job rec, throwing it over the fence and find me a person? Or am I coming to you and saying, I have this problem? Which one is usually that initial like?
Could be
Yeah.
both. Yeah. I mean, generally, the people have already a little bit of a description of a project, a topic, a deliverable that they have in mind. But obviously, and that links a bit to what Christian just said. I mean, we build up like trusted relationships and become a bit a trusted partner for our clients very often. And then they engage us often enough also already in discussions when it just comes, when they are still in the ideating stage of whom they might require to support them. And we are happy to help on that end as well.
Gotcha. Okay, second question. So let's put my request in, right? Am I going to see 100 freelancers that have applied for the job? Am I going to see a couple freelancers that you recommend? What does it look like when I've put the request in?
I mean, we would always like to make a pre-selection. I mean, that's what we see also as our service. So we would surely not send over 100 freelancers and say, here, look, take the night and decide who might fit. Yeah? So, I mean, first of all, everyone in our network is vetted. So then we have spoken to everyone before we actually present a profile to the client to make sure that that person is also interested. Because funnily enough, two sides have to agree to an engagement. Yeah? The powers are a bit shifted. It's not just the client selecting someone, it's also the person saying, the consultant saying, yes, I want to do it. And that we also want to clarify first before we present profiles. And then these selected number of profiles could be a handful, could also sometimes be like 8, 7, 8 or what, but not more for sure, would be shared with the client. And then the final selection is always done by the client after they have got to know the consultant, after they talk for half an hour or what, to really get introduced and get to really be also able to judge if it would also fit on a personal perspective, because the personal perspective, it's people business, is also very important.
So let me ask this, and I want to preface this by saying, and we got 4 more minutes, so I'm giving you like the most loaded question that you could take 4 hours for. So I apologize on that. But I have seen with my own eyes the tech that you guys have, specifically the tech that gives a percentage of match and gives you your ideal candidates, which usually you can quantitatively prove this person's a fit. So I've seen that, right? So I'm asking from a place of I've seen the magic, and now what I really want to understand is from both of your vantage points, how do you think about the technology in our industry? Do you think that the technology is the most important thing and you spend all your time trying to automate the process? Do you think about tech as supporting on the back end? how do you think about the tech? And just remember, for you listeners out there, you have one of the best processes I've ever seen in terms of putting a client in a position of success to find the right, perfect person, not just here's 100 people that have applied. So, loaded question, but how do you guys think about the tech?
Maybe I just give my thoughts and then Christian, we have 4 minutes.
Just
Although,
think
we could discuss for hours. My perspective on it is we use technology heavily, but it's not visible to the client. So we use it to an extent where it helps us internally with the matching, with all the internal processes. We've built up our proprietary software that is just great, but we don't use it to an extent where the client is not personally addressed anymore. That is very important to us because in our beliefs that is also the only way to build up trusted relationships and partnerships. And that's where we differentiate significantly from fully optimized platforms where the client is searching themselves for consultants and then contacting them through the platform and then you work together or not. That's where we are a completely closed system, but nevertheless, technology is very important to us. That would be my short
I
answer.
love Christian. What would you say?
I would say the focus is really on the highest automation possible. So I would always call it like a bit an AI-enabled personal service, which is a bit of a contradiction, maybe. Yeah, but it's really sort of like we're not working with assets. Yeah, we're working with consultants. We're working with people, and they want to do something. They have a passion for their topic. Yeah, and they want to be selected for projects. It's not, they are dependent on projects. They really only want to do the good stuff. And that's what we're here for, to give them those projects. And on the other hand, you have the client with the similar needs. And we bring them together. So having that through a kind of mass platform will probably alienate a lot of our target groups. Yet, of course, there is AI out there, and we're using it internally to have a great matching, to streamline the processes and make things as automated and fast as possible. Because that's on the other hand, the faster you can get the talent to the client, the better it is, and that is basically what we're aiming for.
I love it. I think the analogy I'll use for you guys, just because I really, really, for you listeners, I can't stress enough, like it is an incredible process. But the analogy I'm going to use is if you think about something like Uber automates everything getting to where you want to go. Now, when you think about someone like you, I would say you automate everything to help me make the right decision. So you don't say, hey, we're going to physically bring you to that space. You say, we're going to give you the data and the relationships that we think are good. And we're going to give you, this is literally getting very technical, but percent match. We're going to give you the percent match so you can make an informed decision. Now, the reason that's so important in our space is because talent, unlike Uber, is a very, very hard variable to solve for. And so instead of Uber, where you can take me just to point A and nothing else really matters as long as the car is clean, in our space, it's the total opposite. The relationship really matters. The talent is totally subjective, meaning what I'm looking to get is totally subjective. So you need to have the experience you do. So last quick thing is number one, where can our listeners find you? And then number two, we always ask this question when I ask it both of you is, what's your favorite animal and why?
I think I've had it before. I had for me it's swallows, and I can also explain briefly why, because we have swallows like the birds. I find it just amazing to watch them, because and it's also because they are very artistic when they fly. That's great to see. But it also gives me good feelings because in Germany, where we're based, we have only swallows in summertime because they travel to the south and for winter. So it's just great whenever you sit on the terrace and watch some swallows. It's just nice. Gives you good feelings. But then I'm also having a cat as a pet, so I hope she didn't hear that I said swallows. Of course, She's my favorite animal.
Yeah, if she hears that, she's gonna cats do not go light, you know? My dog, if he heard it, would just get sad. Cats would
No,
like rip your couch up, probably poop everywhere. So good luck with that, David.
exactly.
Christian, what about you,
Exactly.
bud?
It's a tricky one. I probably say the whale shark. It's the biggest one. You can eat tons of plankton. Yeah, it's a vegan one, and uh, it's very graceful. Yeah, sliding through the oceans, and it's an ocean of peace and power and tranquility. But yeah, I'm soon also going to be the owner of a cat, so probably it's also cat for me. I will see how that goes. And you can find me in Düsseldorf most likely.
I'm gonna change, instead of the EPH logo, I'm just gonna put a picture of a cat. Be like, hey, interested in freelance consulting? Check out this company, and it's gonna be a cat. So that is perfect. Listen, guys, this was an absolute blast. Thank you so much for hopping on. What is the website though? So where do you want our listeners to go to? Most important.
So it's expertpowerhouse.com. Or you would also find us on LinkedIn by just typing EPH-Expert Powerhouse, or just Expert Powerhouse also works.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much, guys. This was a blast.